Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a video on a very special perfumer. One of my favorite perfumers. I would probably say I'd put them up there in that top tier, not because of the quantity of scents. This is a gentleman that is 100% quality over quantity. And just like Ron Winograd is one of my favorite perfumers, and he's only had 3 or 4 scents in my arsenal, just like Gerard Anthony is one of my favorite perfumers, and there's only 4 or 5 scents from him in my arsenal. This gentleman has done some of the best fragrances ever made. In fact, if you watch my top 100 countdown, it's littered with these close to the top, and some of them the top spot. And the gentleman's name is Jean-Louis Sieuzac. And he deserves a video all on its own, and that's what he's going to get. Usually when I only have a perfumer with 3 or 4 or 5 fragrances, I'll lump them together with another perfumer because, you know, I want to be able to show you a lot of things and talk about a lot of things on an episode. This gentleman is so influential to me and my collection and my taste. There's really, I don't want to lump him in with anyone else. He deserves his own video, but before we get into that, we are going to do Scent of the Day. And Scent of the Day today is a very strange, very odd, very rare Creed fragrance. And it kind of sucks, actually. I don't like it at all. But I wear my whole collection because I like to keep my brain, you know, fresh and wrapped around my, I like to keep my brain continuously wearing my collection, even though they're not my favorites. And this is a decant I got from Moudessir a year or 2 ago. And it's called Creed Royal Scottish Lavender. Now, if you know anything about the House of Creed, you know that most of the backstory that Olivier Creed made up is complete crap. It's a total lie. If you've ever read the book Ghost Perfumer, it goes into, you know, some of the creations. One of the stories that he was talking about is one of the very first scents Pierre Bourdon ever turned over to Olivier Creed, and they were talking about how he bit off more than he can chew, or more than Pierre Bourdon thought he was giving up. Is he gave away the scent, and immediately after losing out, you know, briefs with L'Oreal or whoever Pierre Bourdon was competing against in the 80s, Olivier Creed took that scent, and if I had the book here, I'd probably try to read you the blurb, but he immediately said, back in 1849, we created this scent, and, you know, of course, Pierre Bourdon is just like, oh God, what did I get myself into? Because when Creed bought the scent, Olivier Creed assumed he bought the right to then take that scent and make up any story he wanted about it, and that's exactly what he did. And in fact, even to this day, even though the lies have basically been revealed and people know, I mean, if you think about it, that book that Gabe Oppenheim put out, every single lawyer on the face of this earth worth their salt would have forced him to retract his statement and put out an apology letter if anything written in that book was not true. He hasn't retracted anything. He hasn't had to put out an apology, which basically means inherently that is 100% facts. He's not just, you know, shooting from the hip there. And Creed's Royal Scottish Lavender shows up in Parfumo right now. If you go to Parfumo.net or Base Notes or something, Fragrantica, they have the release date as 1856. Do you know how absolutely insane that sounds nowadays? Now that we know what we're dealing with, this is one of the gray caps, and if you know anything about Creed's gray caps, they were an old line of fragrances that had gray caps. And they were issued in eau de toilette. Now all Creeds are eau de parfum, okay? So they were all eau de toilettes. They were things like zesty mandarin pamplemousse. They were things like Royal English Leather, which is my favorite from the gray cap line. Royal Scottish Lavender, the original vetiver, which they claim came out in 1940s, and JFK wore, which again was a lie, and, you know, stuff like that. But there were some good fragrances in there, notably Acier Aluminum. I absolutely love that fragrance. And so all the gray caps are discontinued. And this is one where it's extremely hard to find and discontinued. So I just wanted a decant. I wanted to know, you know, as a former Creed collector, the brand completely lost me. Unless I get some sort of giant public apology for selling me a 2018 batch of Aventus that smells like water for $660. I am not ever buying a new Creed, ever. And so Royal Scottish Lavender is basically this fragrance that smells like a perfumer still in training created it, okay? It smells like a junior perfumer created this, and it smells like an unfinished formula because it smells like this dollop of very heady, you know, lavender can smell very herbal, and here it comes across extremely herbal, and when you mix it with this neroli in the opening, it almost smells like laundry detergent, cheap laundry detergent. And for whatever they were selling this for, you know, the backstory, if you'd like a laugh, let's see if I can maybe find the backstory real quick on Royal Scottish Lavender, and then we'll get into the good news of the video, which is on the fantastic Jean-Louis Sieuzac and the perfumes that he created. Let's see, Royal Scottish Lavender. Okay, here, let's see if we can get good for a laugh. Inspired by Balmoral Castle in Scotland, a favorite getaway for British lords and ladies, Royal Scottish Lavender was first made more than 100 years ago. This fragrance offers a touch of country calm and the memory of Highlands lavender surrounding the castle. The heart of lavender is topped by citruses and bergamot, laid on a base of vanilla, sandalwood, and spicy notes. Okay, so that's the short version, but does this smell high quality ingredients to my nose? No, this smells cheap. This smells cheap, and it smells unfinished, and I would not recommend anyone pay, especially the money this is going for nowadays on the secondary market. If you pay $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 for a bottle of this Royal Scottish Lavender, you will be disappointed. In fact, I will tell you right now, just if you're interested in a real lavender fragrance, just get this. Caron's Pour Homme. It does the same thing. There's a little bit more vanilla here, whereas here you get this weird neroli, you know, this strange like citrus neroli lavender thing going on, with some vanilla in the base. There's still vanilla in the base, but here it's more prominent. But this fragrance is 10 times better, and it does the same thing. Celine basically released a fragrance that smells very similar to Caron's Pour Homme, and they're charging 200 and whatever a bottle now. A niche version of Caron Pour Homme. Just buy this. Buy this bottle, not the new one. Buy this bottle if you can find it. I think Le Parfumé has bottles for $60 or something. Total steal at that price for 100 mils. Or whatever this is. Yeah, 100 mils. No brainer. I would go with this all day. In fact, I might never wear this again. I might just keep it as like a reference, you know? But it's not good. Not good at all. Okay, let's get to the good news, because that's why we do these videos. And so let's talk about Opium. So the very first thing that I want to mention is when I pull up Opium Eau de Toilette in Parfumo, it says it was last marketed by L'Oreal, which tells me that it's potentially there's a discontinuation coming, which would be completely unheard of for the fantastic Opium. But Opium made my top 10, I believe. Pretty sure this made my top 10. And Jean-Louis Sieuzac, of course, is the perfumer. This came out in 1977. This is one of the greatest Oriental fragrances, in my opinion, ever made, ever, of all time. If you like Oriental fragrances, if you like heavy, ambery, benzoin, you know, vanilla, that kind of thing, patchouli, there is this unbelievable, and I mean absolutely stunning combination of incense and clove in this fragrance. There's a lot more going on. There's also this beautiful plum note. This could have made my fruit video that I did. This is not a top 10 fruit notes, but I don't think I included this. There is also, so of course it's an Oriental. You're going to get lots of those resinous notes. I mentioned a couple in benzoin and myrrh, but there's Apopanax, which is known as sweet myrrh. There's also, of course, frankincense, which gives you that incense, and there's this amazing Cistus labdanum note, which, why I say this is one of the greatest Orientals of all time, is it borrows heavily from a previous amazing Oriental of all time, which was called Estee Lauder Youth Dew. Okay, so if you like these type of fragrances, I would highly encourage you first check out Youth Dew, which came out 20 years before Opium almost, and check out Hermes JHL and Cinnabar if you get a chance. Those are the fragrances I would recommend checking out. But Opium for me is the king of the hill. I like Youth Dew a lot. In fact, they are very close to each other as far as the way I feel when I wear them. But for some reason, there's just something about Opium. Now, this is a vintage bottle, this eau de toilette. You can tell by the 80 degrees symbol right here. The early bottles had the built-in sprayer, and they were very strange sizes. This is 36 mils. I think this is a 36 mil bottle. Either way, since it's an Oriental, it's held up very well. This is probably a early 80s bottle, I would guess. And then in 1992, they released what was originally known, this is the original release, they then reissued it in what's called Eau de Parfum, but this is called Opium Secret de Parfum. So apparently this is what Yves Saint Laurent called their version of Eau de Parfum. They called it Secret de Parfum back in the 90s when it was originally released. And this is just absolutely stunning. I mean, you know, Opium in itself is stunning, right? This takes this myrrh note and just amps it up. So amped up myrrh, even more amped up resins, more patchouli, more amber. I don't get as much incense. It's still here, but I get more of that amberiness, more of what makes it an Oriental here. It's an eau de parfum. It's supposed to be heavier, right? And it delivers. The myrrh in this is like no myrrh you will ever smell. It is unbelievable. I mean, you know, you could compare it to other Orientals, but Opium stands alone for me. In any iteration, the eau de toilette, the eau de parfum, I've never smelled the pure parfum, but I'm sure it's absolutely amazing. If you're a guy and you've never smelled if you've never smelled Opium or Shalimar or Youth Dew or, you know, those kind of fragrances, Obsession for women, I would highly encourage you to give those fragrances a sniff, because to me, they're completely unisex. They're just Oriental scents, which, you know, I've told this story before, but the husband of Estee Lauder, who of course created Youth Dew, loved these style fragrances. He actually was infatuated with Cinnabar, which is one I don't own, but I want to get a bottle soon. But he didn't want to wear a woman's fragrance, because in the 80s, men did not wear women's fragrances. So Josephine Catapano, who made Youth Dew, and Bernard Chant, who was the perfumer for many of the Hermes scents that Estee Lauder owned Hermes, worked together to create JHL. And so they basically used the blueprint of Youth Dew and Cinnabar and combined it together and made a scent for Joseph Henry Lauder, JHL. And they just named it as a masculine fragrance and gave it to him, and he, of course, wore it and loved it. You could easily wear this. I love wearing this. Really, you could, I mean, this is usually a fall-winter fragrance, but some of the Orientals that I've worn in the heat, they just come alive. I mean, they just, when you wear like one of these resinous, ambery, spicy Orientals, this has a lot of clove and incense in it. And when you wear those type of fragrances in the heat, you notice that you get notes start to appear that you did not notice in the cold. Like you'll notice the rose more. You'll notice the jasmine more. It just brings different elements to the forefront. It's just an amazing experience. I just feel, you know, I just feel so special wearing this. And as soon as, you know, if you're a guy and you haven't got over that hump of trying some of these all-time great fragrances just because they're female fragrances, you have an entire world of fragrances open to you. Jean-Louis Sieuzac, in fact, there's a story that I wanted to tell you guys regarding opium. So Jean-Louis Sieuzac created opium. There were some people apparently that created a couple different parts of the fragrance that don't get credit. Like, for example, Maurice Roger, who ended up running, I think he ended up running a small, I think he ended up running Dior at some point or something. I can't remember the story. But Maurice Roger, who is like a legend in the industry, apparently helped create that mandarin orange top of opium. He doesn't get credit for it, but he helped create that mandarin orange top. But Jean-Louis Sieuzac is the perfumer that gets the credit for opium. And it really is a reference perfume for me. As far as Orientals go, this and Shalimar are my two favorite Oriental fragrances of all time. And when you're in league with Shalimar, I mean, Shalimar is, you know, legendary. It's like holding an artifact in my hands when I hold it and wear it. And this is exactly the same. I mean, it's just, I can't speak highly enough about it. But the story I was going to tell you is Jean-Louis Sieuzac retired at some point, of course. And YSL butchered the reformulation so bad that they literally had to beg Jean-Louis Sieuzac to come out of retirement, come back, and fix their mistakes. He had to come out of retirement and fix the formula that they absolutely ruined opium at one point. So try to go for an older bottle if you could. I will say this, though. I have a 20 to 25-year-old bottle. I think it was under the Gucci PPR days or whatever they call it. And so the cap comes off like this, but it's completely clear. It doesn't have this. It's the eau de toilette of opium. And I love it. I think it's absolutely stunning. So obviously the butchering must have came within the last 10, 15 years, I would say. But at some point, Jean-Louis Sieuzac had to come out of retirement and fix YSL's mistakes. But this is classic number one. And you're going to see, we're going to jump from classic to classic to classic. There's no let-off with Jean-Louis Sieuzac. I mean, his work is just stunning all across the board. So next, we go from opium to this little gem, which if you know me, you may know how highly I rate this. This is Bel Ami. This is the original shaker bottle, and this is the first reformulation. These are the two that I can recommend. The new stuff, I would say probably skip Bel Ami, go for Bel Ami Vetiver if you can't find one of these older bottles. But this one or this one, this is actually my favorite version because I feel like whoever did this reformulation did a great job of making it, I don't want to say more wearable because this is still an absolute monster as far as, you know, depth and projection. And, you know, if you want to wear a perfume that intellectually challenges you, I mean, either of these, there's very little difference. But it feels like they made it a little bit more buttoned up. You know what I mean? Like a little bit more professional, if you will. This seems very rough and tumble, which I absolutely love. I love them both. But for some reason, when I smell this, it feels a little bit more rough and tumble to me. You know, but either formula, I mean, the original shaker bottle or the first reformulation, I put this as my #1 fragrance of all time. So again, we're going from classic to classic, and just wait till you see the next one a couple years later. This came out in 1986. If you don't know Bel Ami, and you're a leather fan, you have to get to know Bel Ami. It is one of the most, it's, for me, I mean, when I smell it, I literally just melt. I smelled it a couple times before on stream, before I turned on the recording, and I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, you just drop your head, and it's just, it's so perfect for me. You know, it's leathery, it's spicy, It's powerful. It's a fragrance that, you know, I feel like if this fragrance had a personality, it would be a no bullshit fragrance. This would be someone that if you started to bullshit them, they would just kind of look at you like, you know, what do you think you're trying to pull? Like they know, you know what I mean? Or they would just move on. They wouldn't waste their time with you. It's that kind of personality. And this has this orris root in the mid. And I've learned that I really like the combination of leather and orris because it adds a little touch of powderiness to it. There's also patchouli. There's sage, which can come across a little spicy. And there's old school carnation in here, which definitely comes across spicy. And there is, in the base, castoreum, and of course that amazing leather note. But there's this thin layer of styrax. And the styrax comes across almost smelling like waxy vanilla, but not sweet. This is not your sweet modern day vanilla. This is actually the complete opposite of that. This is styrax and vanilla while remaining unsweet. And I absolutely love that about Bel Ami. It is, it made #1 as in my 100, my favorite 100 fragrances in my collection. This made #1. You know, if I had to keep one scent, this would very well be close to the running. Right now, it would be a toss-up for me between this and Antaeus. I very well may keep Antaeus at this point if you ask me right this second. But if you ask me tomorrow, it very well may go back to Bel Ami. You know, it's who knows. But there's a slug of oak moss in this too. So yes, you get that leatheriness, but you also get that, you know, a little bit of that underground, dirty feel. It always reminded me, you know, Bel Ami, there were a couple authors that had a boat named Bel Ami. It also means, I think, beautiful friend. I think Bel Ami translates to beautiful friend. And it always reminded me, my uncle had this boat growing up. And, of course, you could go down the stairs when you were in the boat and into this cabin. And, you know, when you go down the stairs in the cabin, there was like old wood paneling. It was a boat from, you know, the 80s or something. And so there was old wood paneling and, you know, it was an enclosed area. So it was a little bit musty and, you know, you could smell that the wood had that old school 80s like panel, like vinyl, like they took a piece of wood and, you know, covered it with a piece of plastic to kind of make it shine, that old school 80s style of wood, almost like laminating the wood, you know what I mean? And there's that feel with the leather, like it's leather and it's also wood, because there's a cedar note here too. And it's just, I mean, I can't say enough about it. For me, it's a perfect creation because it touches on everything I love. And, you know, leather is an easy sell to me in the first place, but this is how leather should be done. There's some animalic aspect, but also on the other side of the coin, even this one that I said is more rough and tumble, I would wear this to work easily. You know, if I'm dressed like this and I have to go to the office, easily I would wear this to work. No problems asked. It's not like Koros or even, you know, some of the more animalic leather fragrances you may think twice about. This one, absolutely not. I'd have no problem wearing this because it just has this buttoned up. You know, someone once said that this smells like an Englishman, like London, for example. Like if Sherlock Holmes had a scent, this would be it. And I completely understand what they mean by that. It has this suave, sophisticated, think of the Britons from days gone by in top hats, right? Think of that sense of class and sophistication. But also when you think about London, there's everything else that goes on in the city, right? It rains a lot. It can be muddy sometimes and muggy. And the city sometimes can have some unruly characters walking about, right? There's all that. It's a perfect representation of the fragrance. There's so much going on. And I never get bored of this, ever. I could wear this 100 times in a row. This could easily be a signature scent for me. Easily. If I had to pick a signature scent, which I don't have one, but I could easily wear this and not get bored. It's just that amazing. And I've worn this in the heat. I've worn this in the Texas heat. Some days I've just broken down and said, I have to have Bel Ami today. and I'll wear it and it still works beautifully, even when it's hot as hell out. But most people would probably call that a fall, autumn, you know, winter fragrance. Okay, so 2 classics down, another classic coming up, and this is another big one. Now we're jumping to 1988. He actually made this with Maurice Roger, and this is Fahrenheit. Now, this is a 200 ml bottle from 2014, I think. It's 4T02, 2014 or 2012. Either way, this is a modern bottle. It's not super old, and it is absolutely stunning. Fahrenheit's one of those fragrances that you do not have to go way back to get old batches, and I can speak out of some certainty because this is 6Y044 is the batch code. So I think this is a 96 fragrance based on the fact that the address is 33 Avenue Hoche. And my old man gave me this. And so I think this is a 90s bottle. And while there are some differences, I can say don't pay huge money for a vintage. Go for the modern stuff, even if, you know, if you can find it at a decent price. This is a 89 bottle. This little mini is very special. This is an 89 bottle that I ended up getting off of a Nuge. And I've tried all 3. And I can tell you that, again, there are some slight differences, but I think what ended up happening with Fahrenheit, is there were some new technological breakthroughs which allowed them to recreate that leathery, you know, that gasoline-like opening that you expect from the vintage bottles, where even the new stuff is stunning. Yeah, it's so good. This fragrance is a perfect encapsulation of the 80s and why the fragrance industry needs to go back to those times. This was Dior, right? This was not some niche house who didn't care if it sold or not. This was Dior putting this out. This was Dior basically making a statement, coming out with its own bottle, one of the most classic bottles of all time with the gradient, almost like a flame, you know, or a burning piece of oil or something, you know, and they just completely knocked it out of the park with this. They came out with something that is unique, that had balls. This fragrance has balls. There's no other way to say it. This fragrance absolutely has balls. It has this gasoline opening, of course, because of the violet leaf in the opening. There's also lavender. And there's that white floral. There's this white, there are florals in this. Most people don't realize that, but the way that they ended up creating Fahrenheit is with a big floral heart. So the violet leaf is there, of course, but there's also honeysuckle, there's carnation, there's jasmine, there is lily of the valley. So there are florals here, but it's hidden under this amazing leathery violet leaf gasoline. You know, if you've ever went to a gas station and spilled petrol on your hand and then you smell it, right? Or if you have like a, you know, mom or dad or, you know, a grandma or grandpa that have an old shed and they've kept a gasoline can in there and they fill up their lawnmower or weed whacker or something and they spill some on the floor and it sits there for, you know, months and months, and then you go open the shed door after it being closed forever and it hits you, you know, that smell. They were somehow able to recreate that here. And it's such a special fragrance because it gives you different elements. You're never bored. Again, with all 3 of these I've mentioned, never bored with any of them. I mean, I always feel like I'm wearing, whenever I wear any of them, I always feel like I'm wearing one of the greatest fragrances of all time. You know, and as a perfumer, even if he hasn't done 20 or 30 scents, what an accomplishment. I mean, to create one of these scents is a perfumer's dream, right? To have 3 back-to-back I just talked about spanning different decades, I mean, that is, he probably never would have imagined in his wildest dreams. But I think Jean-Louis Sieuzac is an absolutely top-tier perfumer from the old days. You you know, obviously I wish that he had done more, and I'm going to try to explore more of his portfolio, but there are 2 more feminine fragrances that he did. But if you don't know any of these first 3, I would highly urge you. I mean, if you're a fragrance fan, it's a no-brainer. No-brainer. Opium, Bel Ami, or Fahrenheit. Those are musts. This is one you might have to work up to. I had to work up to it, but now that I did, I really enjoy it, and I'm glad I have a bottle. This was a trio. So Jean-Louis Sieuzac worked with a perfumer called Nejla Barbier, and also someone you may have heard of, Dominique Ropion, to create Dune for women. So Dune came out in 91, and this has this aldehydic opening with Brazilian rosewood, peony, which is a very hard scent to use. I don't see it used very often. It was used beautifully in Diamant by the House of Amouage. If you know the peony that Bertrand Duchefort used in Diamant, very few fragrances have a good peony note. And in Dune, for women, there is a beautiful peony note used, but also many other florals. I think there's jasmine, rose, ylang ylang, big ylang ylang in this fragrance, I think, and lily. And then a base of ambergris, benzoin, oak moss, musk, vanilla, sandalwood, and patchouli. So it does get a little bit resinous. You'll get almost this incense-like vibe sometimes comes and goes in between that floral breakdown. But then it dries into this woody, almost spicy. You know, you almost get little touches of spices that go with the incense. And I think this won Best Fragrance of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, when it came out in 91, 92, 93, whenever it was. And so, because it dries down into this, you know, patchouli, woody, spicy fragrance, it's not as feminine as, you know, it's made out to be. People make it seem like, oh, Dune is, you know, Dune is one of the most feminine fragrances ever. Absolutely not. Do I think it's more feminine than something like Opium? Yes, I do. I would probably say if you're new to wearing women's fragrances, start with Opium and then transition to something like Dune. But this could easily be worn, especially with that woody dry down, because it's got that sandalwood. And the sandalwood here is beautiful too, by the way. This is just a fantastic fragrance. I mean, if a niche house released this nowadays, unisex, and charged $400 for it, people would be all over it. You know, guys would be all over it. The opening, because of that aldehydic floral bit, might turn some guys off originally, but bear with it. Don't run away after 5 or 10 minutes. Give it a chance to dry on your skin. You'll see how beautiful this fragrance is. And glad I have a bottle. I think the older bottles say Christian Dior here instead of just Dior, but I'm not 100% sure. I think you can tell by looking at the bottom, it'll say Parfums Christian Dior, but again, that's one where I'm not 100% sure. Batch code is 2, I think it's 20017. It could be 2Q017. Either way, it's a 5-digit batch code, which I think indicates that it's an older bottle from the 90s or early 2000s. But I hear even the good stuff is, or even the new stuff is good. So that's another amazing fragrance from Jean-Louis Sieuzac. And the 5th one I have in my collection is another women's fragrance, targeted feminine, but clearly unisex. And if you like oriental fragrances, Kenzo Jungle, Elephant is how it's nicknamed because of the elephant cap, is one to put on the hit list. This is very unique. And again, oriental. So you can see he kind of has a little bit of a specialty in orientals, if you will. Opium, Dune, and now Kenzo Jungle. And he did this with Dominique Ropion as well. So he worked with Ropion on Dune, and then in 1996 they created Kenzo Jungle. And this takes that oriental vibe and adds some very interesting notes. Number one is heliotrope. Beautiful heliotrope note here. Absolutely stunning. Heliotrope always gives me this big purple color. Not in smell, but in color. It's just like a blast of purple showing up in my brain when I smell heliotrope. It's probably because of L'Heure Bleu. You know, and L'Heure Bleu I always associate with heliotrope now. But heliotrope also has this very, you know, almost like you're jumping on a mattress feel. You know, you jump on a mattress and it kind of pops and gives and comes back. That's the texture of heliotrope to me, but in a big purple color. And you get some of that here. You get some of that almond. Heliotrope can also sometimes come off a little bit almondy. And there's gardenia, there's patchouli, there's vanilla, there's cardamom and clove, so it's spicy. And again, makes it more unisex because of that cardamom, which is a big masculine note nowadays, with clove. And what makes this so unique is they added a couple notes that are very interesting. They added a note of mango, which you almost never see. You know, in Timbuktu, Bertrand Duchaufour used green mango, but the mango is completely different from the mango used here. This is a real juicy, I mean, fresh mango with licorice. And the licorice note is very prominent, actually, in the dry down. And, you know, I just think this is an amazing Oriental fragrance that doesn't get talked about very much. Now, this is an older bottle I got from Anouge. So I think this is pre-LVMH. I think this is when Kenzo was still on their own. I don't know for sure. But I hear the new stuff is quite good. There's the batch code for anyone who's into that stuff. It is 4GO2. So, yes, I mean, the elephant is definitely one to give a sniff to. And what a bottle. You know, with the colder weather coming up, this will be one I'm definitely going to get some wears in on. I mean, what a perfumer, though. What a 5 fragrance perfumers portfolio video. Jean-Louis Sieuzac, one of my favorite fragrances of all time. In Bel Ami, one of my favorite Orientals of all time. In Opium, and some would say one of the greatest masculines ever released ever. What a resume. So he deserves his own video. That's the whole point of doing these videos. I wanted to give, you know, props, homage, honor to the perfumers who for so long, you know, worked behind the scenes and didn't get any of the love. It's not like today where the perfumers are put on bottles, their names are put on bottles by Frederick Malle, and they're starting their own brands, and, you know, they're getting free from the big houses. Not back then. Back then, they were in the shadows, you know. The people who created these big fragrances never got mentioned. Some of them weren't even invited to the launch parties. That's how, you know, behind the scenes, that's how menial work they thought of perfumery. And even though Edmund Rudnitska thought of himself as an artist in the 40s and 50s and 60s, you know, it never caught on mainstream while people like Jean-Louis Sieuzac were working. So, thank you, Mr. Sieuzac, for these beautiful creations, for creating basically my favorite fragrance of all time. And, you know, thanks to you guys for watching these videos. I hope you get something out of it. I hope it is useful to you. And I appreciate everyone who comments and likes and subscribes. You know, you don't have to do that, so it is very much appreciated when you do. And, you know, let me know what you think of his work in the comments. Let me know if you have experience with some of these perfumes. And I hope to see you again tomorrow with another video. Cheers. Bye, guys.